And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
In my opinion, Michael Menzel is the greatest artist in board gaming. There are many great artists out there, Josh Capel and others, but Michael Menzel, when he draws a board, it is fantastic. So I was kind of surprised when I saw Legends of Andor that he was the designer of this game and the artist, which I guess brings him full circle. Legends of Andor came out in Europe. It's now being distributed in America by Fantasy Flight, and it is a cooperative game, a fantasy cooperative game, which does not make it unique in that of itself, but I think this game tells a story differently than other cooperative games. Let me show you. Now, I can't really tell you how the game plays exactly because there are multiple scenarios included with the game, and each scenario plays very differently. Now, the regular scenario, or Scenario 1, Legend 1, actually walks you through the game. It's really well done how it does, because the scenarios work where there's different cards that come with the scenario, and these scenarios have letters on them, and as you progress through different time frames, you're going to move this up here, and as you hit different letters, different things will become involved in the game. Now, what you are essentially doing in the scenarios is you are being some heroes. These heroes are heroes of great renown, and they're on stands here, and you're your typical dwarf and archer and magician and warrior. And each one of these folks has a board that comes with them, and the board can be flipped so you can have the male or female of each type. Each person has a color that's associated with them, and that's to show how many dice you will use in combat. So the more willpower that you have, and you'll start here with 7 willpower. So for example, the dwarf will roll 2 dice in combat, but could get up to 3 dice in combat. You also keep track of your strength here. Your strength starts at 1, but as the game progresses, your strength can go up. And as you get equipment, you can see that you can have a shield, and so you might carry a shield, or maybe even carry a bow, or carry a hawk, and other things that you can get over the course of the game. And that's not, and each character has some special abilities, and you can notice here the wizard only ever gets to roll 1 die, but when he rolls that die, he's always allowed to change it to the opposite side, so he can always roll a 4, 5, or 6, while the archer can go all the way up to 6 dice, but he only rolls his 1 at a time, and he can stop rolling whenever he wants, and that's the last roll. So each one has special abilities that they will use, and so you're going to be using these guys and moving around here on this map. And the map is really cool. There's all different numbers on the map. These are used because some things will happen on the map. There's fog tokens that you can go to and discover what's behind the fog. And the whole turn order phase happens here, where first you'll draw an event card and something will happen that no one's sure about. Then all the monsters on the board will move. And if you notice, all over the board there's these little arrows. Well, these show where the monster moves. So if I have a gore here, he'll move into this spot, and then next time he'll move across the bridge, and they'll eventually move until they get to your castle over here. And you'll notice that depending on how many players there are, depends how many times you can let a monster get to your castle. In a 3-player game, the monster gets to your castle more than 2 times and you're out of it. So players are going to be doing all that, and then they'll be moving. This means you'll move that white token up over here to progress the scenario. And usually by the time you get to the end of the scenario, that it's over, and hopefully you've won by then, or else then you automatically lose. Now, players are going to take actions as they go, and they have a certain number of hours in a day, 7 hours, I guess that's all the sunlight you have. So if I move 4 spaces, I would take 4 hours to do that on the board. If I attack somebody, that costs an action. If I drink from a well, for example, which would give me some willpower, that would take an action. And there's different actions that you can take, sometimes based on the scenario. Now, combat, when you come across a monster, you're going to go down here to this combat chart, and you're going to look at the strength of the monster. So, for example, the weakest monster has a strength of 2. And his willpower starts at 2. So he's going to roll 2 red dice. So he rolls his dice and rolls a 1 and a 2. And I'm the wizard and I roll my single die. It's a 1, I flip it to a 6. And each of us takes the highest single roll that we've done and add it to our strength. So a starting wizard would have a strength of 1, plus 6 is 7. The monster here has a strength of 2, plus 2 is 4. I won. In a tie, nothing happens. Otherwise, the monster will do damage to you, or you can do damage to the monster, hopefully killing the monster. As the monsters go up, their strength goes up, and some of them will actually use these black dice, which have 6, 8, 10s, and 12s on them. Well, how can you ever beat such a thing? Well, you can do group combat where a couple of you can fight a monster. You also must be careful when fighting the monsters, because over here on this track, you are going to, every time you kill a monster, this also progresses up 1. So as monsters are killed, you might just go around and try to wipe out the monsters. You can't do that because sometimes that will possess a scenario, push it to the end limits. You can go around the board. There's different locations where you can buy more strength points. Think of it as training. You might have to get to different places. And this is not the only board in the game. One of the scenarios uses another side where you go into a cave. And you can tell basically that this game is kind of put together with a scenario builder in mind, where you can make your own scenarios or download them off. Now, the designer of the game, Michael Menzel, also did the artwork, and you can see that the artwork is fabulous. And there's really tons of components that are included with the game that aren't used except in a few of the scenarios. So some of these are used in some scenarios, some are used in others. The monsters are going to get progressively harder until you fight the dragon, and while this is not as impressive as a miniature dragon, it's still pretty cool looking for a cardboard piece. So that's it. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, because part of the game is finding the story and accomplishing the story. So I don't, the goal might be to kill a bad guy, or to stop the enemies from getting to the castle, or to deliver a message to somebody. Whatever it might be, you have to do it like within a time limit, and trying to figure out how to beat monsters and do other goals along the way. This game really is almost an enigma in how it's put together. On one end, it's so open-ended. There's so much you can do. It's like a giant toolbox of a game just waiting for more scenarios. And each of the scenarios in the game is really different. At the same time, the scenarios themselves are very restrictive to the degree, like you need to do this, you need to do that. So what you have to do is you have to kind of solve a puzzle. As much as it's fantasy and there's dice rolling for combat, and that's all fun and good, it's still a puzzle in of itself, because you can only kill so many bad guys. You can't just go through and kill everybody. That will increase the time track too fast, and you'll lose the game. But you have to kill monsters, so you have to think carefully, is this monster battle worth fighting? Is this something that I want to do at this point in time? How many monsters can we let get through our lines? Or how can you sneak through? And you can say, and you can see where the monsters are going to move. And, some people aren't going to like that, because people are going to sit there and try to figure it all out. But nothing is set in stone, because you have dice that you're rolling for combat. You never know what events are going to come up each turn. That being said, once you play the scenario the second time through, you distinctly have a leg up, because nothing is a surprise anymore. Playing through each scenario the first time, I thought, was more fun than the second time. Now, the second time we came through and we were like, we got this. We're going to do this. We know what to do this time. But the first time, it's like, what? I didn't know a goblin was going to show up there. Or whatever they're called. They're really weird names for the monsters. Scores and gars and... I don't know. We just call them goblins and trolls and such. But the everything is beautiful. The game is really heavy with all the components inside, as in you get a good chunk for your money here. And I think it's good. The problem is I think we're going to need to keep seeing scenarios come out to keep it fresh if you want to play it more than, let's say, 15 times. I would say that right now you can play each scenario through twice, maybe some of the later ones even more times as they do things, but there's that thrill of seeing the new discovery stuff as time goes by. So will we see expansions for this? I don't know. Do I recommend it? Well, yes, I do, with the caveat that you know what you're getting yourself in for. If you like fantasy, this is one to think about, but this is going to be a fantasy, almost puzzle-solving game with adventure on the side rather than just straight-up adventure. Sure, you have freedom to go do whatever you want, but you can't really run over here and buy strength points when it will obviously lose you the game. So that your paths are limited, but that doesn't mean that the game's less fun. I think it's a very good one. It's a good cooperative game, and I look forward to seeing more from Michael Menzel in the future.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Shut the door.